If you think hard work alone guarantees success, you're wrong. Steve Harvey once worked so hard. He slept in his car for 3 years, survived on cheap sandwiches every single day, and still failed miserably. So why did he eventually become a millionaire? Was it talent, luck, or did he discover a truth most people are too afraid to face? It's 1957. Welch, West Virginia, a mining town so small, so dusty, that dreams don't grow here. They get buried under coal dust and unpaid bills. This is where Steve Harvey was born into a working-class African-American family. His father was a coal miner, his mother a homemaker. They lived in a tiny house packed with siblings, their meals simple, canned beans and bread, nothing fancy, nothing extra. From a young age, Steve had what some would call delusional dreams. In elementary school, he was given an assignment. Write down what you want to be when you grow up. Steve didn't hesitate. He wrote, "I want to be on television." When his teacher read that answer, she didn't smile. She laughed. And not the kind of laugh that lifts you up, the kind that cuts you down. She even read it aloud to the whole class so everyone could join in the joke. Steve sat there humiliated, but there was one person who didn't laugh, his father. A quiet man with coal permanently under his fingernails, his father looked Steve in the eyes that night and said, "You can do anything, but you'll have to pay twice the price as everybody else." That single sentence burned into Steve's memory. But here's where the debate begins. Was this kind of upbringing, the poverty, the ridicule, the struggle, actually a fuel for his future success? Or is that just a romantic myth we tell ourselves? Think about it. Some people argue hardship builds character. Others say it breaks you, trapping you in a cycle of scarcity. Steve's life would soon become a test case for that very question. In high school, Steve was an athlete, boxing, running track, even trying out football. But sports were a distraction from a gnawing truth. He didn't want a regular life. Not a steady factory job, not a predictable paycheck. He wanted something bigger, but didn't yet know how to get there. He graduated, drifted between small jobs, carpet cleaner, mail carrier, auto worker. Each time, he felt like a caged bird. But like most young men, he didn't have a plan. He just had that faint, almost absurd dream of making people laugh. The first time he tried stand-up comedy was at an open mic night in 1985. He bombed, badly. The audience didn't laugh. They stared. But afterward, a man approached him and said, "You've got something? It's raw, but it's there." That tiny seed of encouragement was enough to light a fire, but fires need fuel, and Steve's fuel was running out fast. By his late 20s, Steve had made the most dangerous career decision anyone can make. He quit his job for a dream that wasn't paying him. The gigs were small, the money smaller. He couldn't pay rent. The spiral had begun. Within months, Steve was homeless. This wasn't a romantic, movie-style homelessness. It was the kind where you live in your car because you have nowhere else to go. His car was an old Ford Tempo, its upholstery stained, the seats flattened from sleeping on them. He'd park in safe spots, mostly near public swimming pools or 24-hour gyms, because they had bathrooms where he could wash up. On good days, he'd scrape together enough for a cheap sandwich. On bad days, he'd go without. The nights were cold, the days long. Imagine living like that for a week. Now imagine doing it for 3 years. That was Steve's reality. And here's the first point of real controversy. Some people romanticize this stage. They say it's proof that if you just keep going, you'll make it. Others, and maybe you, might call it reckless, even stupid. Because let's face it, Steve could have quit, gotten a stable job, and lived in an apartment instead of a car. So what's smarter? Cutting your losses or betting everything, even your well-being, on a long shot? Yet Steve made his choice. He wasn't just chasing a dream, he was making a vow to himself. In his own words, I'm either going to make it or I'm going to die trying. And that's where part one ends. A man living out of his car, clinging to a promise that made no logical sense, but would eventually change his life. Picture this. A car is parked in the far corner of a public swimming pool lot. The sun is just coming up, and inside, a man is curled in the back seat. There's a duffel bag under his head, a crumpled jacket over his legs. The windows are fogged from breath. This is Steve Harvey's home. For most people, homelessness is a temporary nightmare. For Steve, it was a lifestyle that lasted nearly 1,000 days. The daily grind of survival, every day was a logistical puzzle. Where to park so no one would call the cops, where to shower without attracting attention, how to eat without spending more than $1 or $2. He found public swimming pools to be a blessing, not for swimming but for showers. He'd slip early in the morning, wash quickly, and leave before the staff caught on. On other days, he'd use truck stop bathrooms. Meals were bare bones. A loaf of bread, a jar of mayonnaise, and if he was lucky, a slice of processed cheese. He told interviewers later that there were days he couldn't even afford that. Hunger became normal. The car smelled of sweat and fast food wrappers. The seats were his bed, the dashboard his kitchen, the trunk his closet. He owned maybe 3 shirts and 2 pairs of pants. And here's the uncomfortable truth that people rarely admit. Homelessness isn't just about lacking a home. It's about losing dignity. Steve once described the feeling of walking into a comedy club in the same clothes 3 nights in a row and catching the look from other performers. The look that said, "Man, are you okay? Why not quit?" Friends and family were confused, even angry. They'd call him selfish for refusing to grow up and get a regular job. His own mother begged him to come home, find work, and stop chasing this ridiculous dream. Steve's answer? A stubborn, almost irrational. If I quit now, I'll never know how far I could have gone. And this is where the debate heats up. Is this unshakable commitment admirable, or is it delusion dressed as courage? At what point does persistence become self-destruction? It's easy to cheer for someone once they've made it. But would you cheer for the man sleeping in his car for a dream that may never pay off? Small wins, big setbacks. Even during these years, Steve got gigs. Small comedy clubs would pay him $50, maybe $75 for a night's work. But the travel often cost more than the paycheck. Once, he drove 8 hours to a show, spent the night in the parking lot, performed for a half-full audience, and then drove back without enough money for a proper meal. The worst moment? Missing a show because his car broke down. The promoter swore he'd never hire him again. For a struggling comic, that kind of loss is devastating, not just financially, but for your reputation. The breaking point, by his 3rd year of living in the yacht Ford, Steve hit emotional rock bottom. One night, sitting alone in his car in a Walmart parking lot, he considered quitting. He imagined walking into a fast food restaurant the next morning, filling out a job application, and starting a life that was at least predictable. But something stopped him. Not pride, not optimism, but the memory of his father's words. "You'll have to pay twice the price as everybody else." If this was the price, Steve decided he'd keep paying. The call that changed everything. Then, one afternoon, his pager, yes, this was before cell phones, went off. It was a message from a booker in New York City. They wanted him to perform at the Apollo Theater. For comedians, the Apollo isn't just a gig. It's a rite of passage, a place where legends are made or destroyed. The problem? Steve was in Florida. He had no money for a plane ticket. He called the booker back, ready to decline, but she said something that froze him. "If you can get here by tomorrow night, the spot is yours. If not, I'm giving it to someone else." Steve hung up the phone and stared at the dashboard. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. He called a friend, borrowed enough cash for gas, and set off on a 20-hour drive. No GPS, just road maps and pure determination. He arrived in New York exhausted, hungry, and in desperate need of a shower. But when he stepped onto that stage, something clicked. The audience roared. Steve Harvey had arrived. Debate trigger. Here's the thing. If Steve had missed that call or decided the trip was too hard, the world might never have known his name. So does this mean success is about persistence? Or was it luck? Being in the right place with the right friend to lend him money at the exact right time? Would persistence alone have worked without that one lucky break? The Apollo Theater in Harlem is a place where careers are born and buried. When Steve Harvey walked onto that stage in 1990, he didn't just see a microphone. He saw a firing squad of expectations. The Apollo crowd is famously ruthless. If you're not funny, you'll know it in seconds. Steve didn't start with jokes. He started with presence. He scanned the audience, let the silence breathe, and then, with his first punchline, the room exploded in laughter. It wasn't polite laughter. It was the kind that shakes the walls. That night, Steve didn't just survive the Apollo. He conquered it. The domino effect. The Apollo gig led to more club bookings in New York, then invitations to appear on televised stand-up specials. Each show meant more exposure, and with every audience, Steve refined his style, equal parts sharp wit, preacher-like delivery, and relatable storytelling. By the early 90s, he'd landed a spot hosting It's Showtime at the Apollo. That hosting job gave him two priceless things: a steady paycheck and national visibility. From there, his career spread like wildfire. Sitcom roles, The Steve Harvey Show, stand-up tours, The Kings of Comedy, and eventually his own radio show, The Steve Harvey Morning Show, which would become one of the most listened-to programs in America. Family Feud. A reinvention in 2010, Steve took over as host of Family Feud. At the time, the show was struggling, ratings were flat, and it was seen as a tired format. Within a year of Steve's arrival, viewership surged. Why? Because he broke the mold. Most game show hosts stick to the script. Steve didn't. He reacted to contestants' answers with facial expressions, long pauses, and side comments that sometimes became funnier than the actual questions. Audiences loved it. Clips of his reactions went viral online, giving Family Feud a new life in the age of YouTube and social media. But here's the controversy. Some fans say Steve's charisma single-handedly saved Family Feud. Others argue that his style, while hilarious, overshadowed the game itself. They claim he turned a family quiz show into the Steve Harvey Show, featuring Family Feud in the background. So which is it? Did he save the format or hijack it? And here's the bigger question. Was his rise inevitable because of his raw talent, or did he simply step into the perfect opportunity at exactly the right moment? The power of adaptation. To his credit, Steve has an uncanny ability to adapt. In stand-up, timing is everything. In television, personality is everything. And Steve could switch between both effortlessly. But adapting came with risks. His hosting style was unscripted, which meant he sometimes walked a fine line between humor and controversy. In the age of social media, a single off-color remark could go viral for the wrong reasons. Still, Steve leaned into it. He understood something most hosts didn't. In the modern era, memorable moments matter more than perfection. The Miss Universe fiasco in 2015, Steve hosted the Miss Universe pageant. Millions watched live as he announced the wrong winner, crowning Miss Colombia before realizing Miss Philippines had actually won. It was a disaster. Social media erupted. Memes spread like wildfire. For many hosts, this would have been a career-ending blunder. But Steve owned it. He admitted the mistake, apologized sincerely, and even joked about it later. The incident, instead of burying him, made him even more famous. Debate trigger. Was this recovery proof of Steve Harvey's resilience, or was it another example of lucky spin turning bad press into free publicity? Think about it. Some people's careers never recover from a mistake like that. Did Steve's survive because of skill, charm, or because controversy just happens to be good for business? Fast forward to the present. Steve Harvey is no longer the man sleeping in the back of a Ford Tempo. He's a household name, a multi-millionaire, and a brand unto himself. His career now stretches across television, radio, books, business ventures, and philanthropy. The Empire Steve's workday is a marathon of influence, hosting Family Feud and Celebrity Family Feud, running the Steve Harvey Morning Show, still one of the most listened to radio programs in America, publishing best-selling books like Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, which spawned a Hollywood film, and Jump managing Steve Harvey Global, a company overseeing his production deals, brand partnerships, and philanthropic efforts. His estimated net worth? Somewhere north of $200 million, and that's not just from salaries. It's from real estate, investments, licensing, and intellectual property. The motivational speaker in recent years, Steve has positioned himself as a motivational figure. He delivers speeches about faith, risk-taking, and perseverance. One of his most famous lines is, "If you don't jump, your parachute will never open." It's a metaphor for taking risks in life, stepping off the ledge to discover your potential. Clips of him delivering this message rack up millions of views online. But here's the split. Not everyone buys it. Supporters say Steve is living, proof that no matter how bad it gets, you can climb your way out through grit, faith, and persistence. Critics argue that his message oversimplifies reality. For every Steve Harvey, there are thousands who jump and crash. They accuse him of selling hope without acknowledging the role of luck, timing, and connections. So the question becomes, is Steve's story a blueprint or a one-in-a-million exception? The PR question, Steve's life story is undeniably inspiring, but it's also undeniably marketable. Over the years, he's told the same beats: poverty, homelessness, persistence, breakthrough, triumph. Some skeptics believe he's polished the rough edges of his life to make the story more cinematic, more digestible, more sellable. Not to say it isn't true, but maybe it's curated. After all, in entertainment, the truth isn't always enough. The presentation matters just as much. The legacy, whatever side you fall on, Steve Harvey has left a mark. He's influenced countless comedians, breathed new life into a classic game show, and inspired millions through his words. But the final debate remains. Is Steve Harvey the ultimate self-made success story? Proof that unrelenting persistence beats all odds? Or is he the greatest salesman of his own life, turning personal history into a product that sells as well as his shows? Closing hook for the audience. So what do you think? If you strip away the cameras, the books, and the brand deals, is Steve Harvey the underdog hero we should all look up to? Or just a man who mastered the art of telling his story at exactly the right time? Drop your thoughts below. Because this debate, it's far from over.